Ben has crafted songs that have been seared into our collective consciousness, such as Soul Meets Body, Such Great Heights, and of course is heading out with Death Cab later this year on tour if you'd like to hear those songs in person. He's made more albums than you want me to list here, and he would follow us all into the dark. So please welcome to the stage musician slash runner slash vinyl collector, Ben Gibbard.
This is like a very nice setup here.
Yeah, how does it compare to your home setup?
Sadly, I only have one turntable at home. I'm not able to do this at home. Yeah.
I hear from you earlier that you don't actually set your living room up as a whole listening station. It's actually a living room. Is that correct?
Yeah, I live in my living room, yes. But I do have my stereo in there, and I have a nice, I'm sitting in a nice listening position while I'm drinking coffee in the morning and putting on records and stuff like that. So it's kind of, it's the ritual at my house is first the kettle gets turned on and a record gets put on immediately, first thing in the morning. How
do you select your morning record?
Normally I have a stack of things that are relatively new that I've just purchased or pulled out of my collection, and I usually will listen to a record. Once I've purchased a record, I'll listen to it 5 to 10 times, and then it gets filed away with the other records. So it's kind of a rotation of maybe 20 records for a period of time. But I will wake up and I can't wait to drink coffee, and I can't wait to put a record on. Just like my first two thoughts in the morning.
How many records do you have in your living room collection?
Like 2,300, I think.
Are they cataloged?
Yeah, they're the genre and alphabetical in the genre.
Incredible. Well, before you had 2,300 records, how did you first start to listen to music as a kid?
My earliest memories of listening to music were records being on in my family's living room. There was a turntable in the living room, just like in my living room, and there were Beatles records and AC/DC records. It was nice to hear Powerage earlier. Devo records, Beach Boys stuff. There was always just music on in my house, and I don't remember at what age I was allowed to touch the turntable, but it was a little later than I feel like it should have been. I feel like it was, but yeah, there was always music on. So I just kind of from a very early age developed this affinity for records over any other format.
Do you remember the first time you held yourself on vinyl in your hands? Do you remember that moment?
Oh yeah, it was our first record, Something About Airplanes, that came out in 1998, and I remember getting the record and holding it, and I'm sure anybody else in the room who's made a record before has had the similar experience when it's your first record and you're holding it and you just can't believe that all of these thoughts in your head got put onto some kind of recorded kind of format, and now you're holding it on a record or a CD or a tape or whatever it might be. But in this case, holding the vinyl copy of Something About Airplanes, it seemed to kind of give what we were doing a level of legitimacy that it automatically gave us legitimacy by having a record, because you had to go send that thing off to a plant and it had to get printed and pressed and everything like that. Yeah, I just remember being so proud of that artifact.
How do you decide what to collect? What draws you to collect something?
I mean, for me, records are stories. And it's not just the stories of the songs on the records, it's the people who made them, it's where those records ended up in the world, where you might have found that record. And for me, and I think the first thing I'll play will be indicative of this, I'm just so attracted to the stories of the people who made these things, especially older records, people who are not with us anymore, and thinking that at some point 50, 60 years ago, somebody had this vision of themselves as an artist and wrote all this material and practiced it and recorded it, and a record label put it out. And in some cases, these people became very successful, but in most cases they didn't. And for me, the record I'm going to put on first, if I can find it here, this is a record that I bought some years ago by a gentleman from Hawthorne, California, named Emmett Rhodes. And this gentleman was in a band called the Merry Go Round. They were kind of like kind of local band around these parts, kind of playing like garage rock back in the 60s. And he signed to ABC Records and used the advance to buy a recording studio that he basically had in his garage. And he made this record, and this is a perfect record. And it's a perfect record. And the songs are so beautiful, and they're so wonderful, and it didn't do shit when it came out. And so when I fell in love with this album, part of the relationship that I formed with this record was really in the negative space of this person's career, in that this person made such a brilliant piece of work, and it became something that collectors desired, but that never had the impact that I feel it should have had in the world. So I'll put a song on, and you guys can determine whether or not you agree with me or not.
What relationship does what you collect have to what you actually make?
I find that as I get older, I'm becoming more interested in music that I don't know how to make, or that is outside of my purview of the genre of music that I play. And I think a lot of that is because I kind of know how I kind of know how indie rock guitar records are made at this point. Made like quite a bit of them. And
was it 10?
10 and change, yes.
But who's counting?
And I still love that genre, and I love, bands that are active today and everything like that. But for me, in my listening, I find I'm more attracted to styles of music that are either antiquated, they're either older styles that allow me to dream on the artists, if that makes sense. Where, they're not people I could know, because most of them have passed away, or they were making music in an era that I don't live in and can only dream about what it must have been like. And then also for me, there are records that, a lot of this music is music that is outside of the music that I make, and the inspiration I find in it is not the way I might listen to a Bob Dylan song, like, man, that's a great fucking song, I need to write a song as good as that. I never will. But it's like, it's more like, oh, that's a really interesting piano figure in that Mal Waldron record or whatever. That's kind of cool. I mean, I could maybe do something like that. But if I'm trying to copy that, it's going to sound nothing like that thing, because I don't have the technical ability and I'm not in the world of that music. So to me, I'm finding a lot of the things that I'm listening to now and I'm inspired by are things that are not necessarily in a genre that I would ever make. And I kind of like it that way. It feels like I'm able to really be an appreciator, because I'm not comparing myself to it, if that makes sense.
Speaking of which, are you going to play us some jazz?
I think I will, actually. So I'm going to put on a record, just a live recording of Don Cherry, Dave Holland, Steve Lacy, and Masahiko Togashi. Masahiko Togashi is a really interesting artist to me. He's a Japanese drummer and percussionist who had a terrible accident and lost the use of his legs in the 70s. But he continued playing, and he adapted his playing style for his disability, which I think is really inspiring and beautiful. So I'm going to put this on and see what you guys think.
So why do you love this record?
I think I love it because kind of in relation to what I was just saying, this music is so foreign to me as far as being able to make it or understand how it's made. And I'm not an improviser in any capacity whatsoever. I'm a pretty bad instrumentalist. I mean, I'm a songwriter, so I don't practice guitar or know how to play it very well. In fact, I'm actually, I think, the third best guitar player in my own band. So I just love this collection of players, and I'm a huge Don Cherry fan. And Masahiko Togashi is somebody that I've kind of is fallen into my kind of listening patterns, and I just find his story fascinating, and I find how he was able to augment his playing to kind of, without the use of the bottom half of his body, to be really inspiring and really beautiful. And Don Cherry as a musician is one of the, he's one of the greatest musicians of all time, in my opinion. And his work spans such an interesting kind of gamut between really, really out there free stuff all the way to, kind of almost spiritual chant music and everything in between. I just think he's wonderful.
Are there any records? Is there any record that you wish was in your collection that you just haven't been able to find yet or get your hands on?
Well, since we're doing this for Discogs,
hey!
I have a dilemma as a collector, which I'm sure a lot of people have, where you want to find things in the wild, right? Right? You want to walk into a record store, right? You want to find it in the wild. You want to go into a record store and be like, oh my God, there's that thing. But it's very easy to just hold your finger over the buy button and just go like, and so I'll have things on my want list where it's like I could just touch this button and within weeks it would be in my house.
You could make it all go away.
I could make it all go away. I could make the wanting go away, right? So in today's day and age, as a collector, it's both. It is there is that. I think one of the things about collecting at an earlier age was you really had to stumble across stuff. You had to be in the right store at the right time and find that record, and you're oh my God, there it is. That just seems to happen less and less. I think because a lot of people are taking records out of circulation that are valuable and selling them on Discogs, on eBay. And as a collector, that's not a bad thing, because if you're looking for something, you can get it, most likely, right? Unless it's not available in the marketplace, which is like the worst thing to see on Discogs, right? Not available in the marketplace. Why not?
Because you've been betrayed.
Exactly, yes. But two records that I would love to find in the wild, but probably will not find in the wild for different reasons, are an original UK pressing of The Laws record, the self-titled record, which is one of my favorite records.
Does anyone here have that? Can we fix this?
UK pressing, has to be UK, original UK pressing.
No? Okay.
What's that? Okay, well, we'll talk after this then. All right, good. And then a copy of the Mal Waldron record, Spanish Bitch, which is a Japanese, it's a Japanese-only record that came out in I think 1970. There are copies on Discogs. They are expensive. And we had just spent some time in Japan in January for a music festival, and all of us, one of my bandmates, my managers here, we're all record collectors, and we were just like, okay, we're hitting here, we're hitting here. If you find a copy of Spanish Bitch, I get it, you don't get it. So it became this, and we were just all over Tokyo trying to find these various records. And I found a couple of them that were on my list.
Is there
Did
like
not find Spanish Bitch.
Hierarchy of who gets the record if you find it? Or do you like thumb wrestle, or like what's the...
We have a specific list.
Yeah. We have a shared note where we have check marks. So if you find something that somebody's looking
next
for,
below your band agreement shared note, you have.
Oh yeah, no, we're all on it. Yeah, and it's like Nick, me, Dave. These are the records we're looking for. So if you're in the shop, and thankfully there wasn't any crossover on this trip. So it wasn't like any of us found ourselves in a situation where we both had the same record on our want list, and one of us came across it. So far it's been fairly. There have been no conflicts.
Okay, it's more like a manifestation space.
It is, yes.
Than a hit list.
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
But I will say that being in Tokyo shopping for records ruined me. It ruined all of us. It was like I came back to Seattle and I was like, I love it here, but I go to my local record stores and I'm like, that's just it's not the same.
Yeah, you tasted greatness.
Yeah, I did, and I don't know what to do now.
Let's taste another greatness.
Okay.
Are any of these records morning records?
There is one I will play for you. This one comes with a story. This is somewhat of a sad story, but I want everybody to know this was a fairly long time ago, so no one has to feel bad. Okay. I lived in Los Angeles for a brief period of time, and when I was in a relationship, when that relationship dissolved, I packed my records in my Prius, and I drove back to Seattle with my records and a couple of my guitars.
This is not off-brand.
No, it's not at all. No, it's not at all. And so I got back to Seattle, and when a relationship ends, you tend to be sad, right? You tend to be kind of wallowing in it. And I found myself listening to this record by Jim O'Rourke. It's called The Visitor. And I listened to this record every morning for 3 months. It was the first thing I put on. And it was this record that, it's an instrumental record. Jim O'Rourke, some of you might be familiar with him. And it was this record that, there are so many kind of emotional peaks and valleys in this record. And it became, it really was mirroring what I was feeling at the time. And so I would get up every morning, and when you're depressed or you're heartbroken or whatever, sometimes it takes some energy to get out of bed and get your day going. And this record just became like this was welcoming me to every day, And putting this record on kind of made me feel less alone, and it made me feel, it allowed me to kind of experience some beauty first thing in the morning, in a time in my life where I wasn't feeling like I wanted to experience those things. So, and it would start like this.
Okay.
Right? It has all these peaks and valleys,
Okay, Ben can soundtrack my next breakup. I'm gonna call you and be like, Ben, it's time. That was gorgeous. I read a story about Steve Albini, Chris Walla, a shellac 7-inch. Mm-hmm. How did that particular record, what did that record do for you guys that wasn't musical?
Yeah, well, I can't remember the name of the record, but it was a shellac 7-inch from the mid-'90s.
It was not mentioned where I read it either.
Okay, yeah. And Nick will probably remember this as well. The late, great Steve Albini was a real champion of DIY and people learning how to do it themselves, and anybody can make a record. You don't need to be a master engineer. You don't need to go to school for this. You need to just start doing it, right? It's like being a musician. You don't have to go to school for it. Just fucking do it, And I remember that Chris Walla had this shellac 7-inch, and when you folded it open, there was a photo of their recording space, and there were numbers on every microphone and the placement of every microphone in the room. And then there was a key. So it would be like these ribbon mics are on the overheads. This is the mic in the kick drum. This is the mic on the guitar amp. And what it felt like, Albini was telegraphing in that kind of diagram, that photo, was that anybody can fucking do this. All you need is just the stuff. It's just stuff. You just get the stuff, and if you want it to sound like this, just put the mics here. And I think that we would pore over this photograph. We didn't have this equipment. There was some really nice equipment there. But we would pore over this photograph, and I think, I can't really speak for Chris, but it felt like this was kind of part of his schooling, this photograph. And it was really empowering and generous to see someone like Albini basically showing us the secrets to his records. Because this was not proprietary information. This wasn't, these weren't industry secrets. This was just like, this is where the microphones go, And that photograph made a huge impression. I certainly believe on Chris, definitely on me. And when we were making our first couple records, we were just doing it in the house we lived in. And I grew up, kind of as an aside, I grew up I'm 48, I grew up in the 80s, and before I discovered punk rock and music that was mine, I legitimately thought that you couldn't be in a band unless you could play like ripping guitar solos, unless you could play like Dweezil, And because on MTV and everything that we'd see, it's like that's the music that was in the world, and I didn't know that this music existed that was more heart than technical prowess, And once I kind of found my world, found the music that I loved, found the bands that, they weren't playing arenas, they were loading into the club, and you could like help them with their amps or whatever. That just made a huge impression on me as a teenager because I didn't know that stuff existed. And that certainly carried over to how we made records in the early days. Because it was like, yeah, you just get the stuff and you just do it. You don't have to go to a recording studio and pay all this money. You just get a 8-track or a 4-track and you just start doing it.
Yeah, I too didn't know you could be in a band. It just wasn't on my radar until one day it was. What do you want to play next?
I will play a record that meant a lot to me as a teenager. This is Teenage Fan Club's Bandwagon-esque. This is a record that I loved so much that I covered it in its entirety some years back. And this was a record, when I heard this record when I was 14, I kind of felt like amongst other artists that I was listening to, I felt like I'd found my people, And this is my favorite band to this day. And because life is a crazy journey, I've become friends with these guys, and I never miss an opportunity to tell them how much their music meant to me. So,
who has this record? Bruce, I see you. This is Bruce.
Yeah. I have a very distinct memory of when I was in, I'd come back from my freshman year of college, like Thanksgiving, whatever, first weekend home, and my dad had played me the freewheeling Bob Dylan on the turntable, and for whatever reason I hadn't heard that record at that point. And I remember it got to the Girl from the North Country, and I remember looking at him, and he had his hand over his face like this, and I could tell he was thinking about a woman that wasn't my mom, And
how could you tell?
I could just tell. And what I'm getting at is music has this unbelievable power to take us back to times in our lives. And when this record was just on, this song called Alcoholiday, I just was transported back to being 14 and having this record on and being like, God, I love this record so much. And then it got to that song, and I was just like, it just tore my fucking heart out of my chest, And whenever I hear that song, I get taken back to that place. And I think it's one of the most beautiful things about music in general is that it exists as this time machine in your life where it just kind of takes you back and reminds you of people in your life that maybe you're out of contact with or maybe have passed on. And there's really not another art form that does that. and you know, this record never ceases to kind of give me those kind of chills when I listen to it.
Do you get the experience when you're listening to music, and this is kind of jumping back, it just occurred to me, but you know when you play a song, and then when you listen to that song, you have like all the physical memories of playing that song washing through you. It's kind of like all the pages in a book squished together. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that with cover songs also? Like songs you've covered, mm-hmm. It's like you've listened to them, you've had these multiple experiences with them, and then when you play them a bunch, like let's say you add it to your set, mm-hmm. You played it night after night, does that happen to you, that like time accordion?
There are songs that we covered so many times back in the day that were kind of part of our set that they almost became our songs. But I think more times than not when we do cover anything or when we have covered songs, it kind of feels like cosplay. You know, if I covered you know, a song in a solo set, I'm covering it because I wish I had written it, or if the band is playing it, we wish we had written this song. And so for 3 to 5 minutes, or whatever it might be, you get to kind of cosplay being in that band, you know, and kind of have the song kind of flow through you as if you had created it. It's kind of like, you know, like one of those leagues where, you know, dudes my age and older can go and like pretend they're in the major leagues. Those like fantasy camps. It's like baseball fantasy camp. It's like a rock and roll fantasy camp. You get to pretend you're in the Who or something like that. You know, it's fun.
Have you covered The Who?
I have actually, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I see another record that went to the top of this invisible pile.
It did. This is okay. I'll pull this out here. So this is a relatively new record. It came out last fall, and it's by, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Bibio, and is a series of ambient works that he's put out called Phantom Brickworks. And not this record in particular, but an earlier version of Phantom Brickworks that came out maybe 10 years ago, became one of these records that I had on all the time in the morning, especially I live in Seattle, and especially in the winters in Seattle when it's very gray and cold and wet in the morning. These particular records, especially the first Phantom Brickworks, felt so much like what was happening outside that at the time I didn't want to go out into. So we'll put this on and just give you a little taste of this. I never listened to it this loud. It feels really good this loud.
It's big.
It's very big. But it sounds to me like the Northwest, you know.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I hear what you mean. Okay, we have time for one more record. And I see you pick something back here. That's very exciting.
Yes, this was a record that the lovely people at Discogs were able to acquire for me. Thank you very much. You know, one of the things I love about collecting records is that you end up kind of going down. You kind of go down these lanes, and you kind of discover a producer or a musician or an artist, and you kind of start following. It's this path that sometimes the path goes cold, the trail goes cold, you know, you have to turn around and come back. But sometimes you find yourself kind of weaving through all these artists and records that, in most cases, time is more or less forgotten. And this record is produced by a reggae producer out of New York, goes by the name Bullwacky. And I first came in contact with his production through the Horace Andy record, Dancehall Style, which is one of my favorite records ever. It's just this really bizarre reggae record. It's like a lot of synthesizers, and it's really gritty sounding. And so this record is in that, of this label, of this sound. I love the artwork because it just seems like they just didn't try. You know, it's like, this looks like a passport photo that they're using here. I don't know what this is. But it's sick, so I'll put it on and see what you guys think.
Oh yeah.
thank you so much, Ben, for sharing your collection, your stories, your memories, your artistry. And this has been such a pleasure. Thank you on behalf of Discogs and myself, and appreciate you.
This is wonderful. Thank you very much for the conversation. Thanks for coming, everybody. And thanks, Discogs, for this. I was so excited to do this.
Also, thank you all for being here. Like, what an insane thing that we get to do is sit around and chop it up and listen to music. It's pretty spectacular.
Yeah, I agree.
Couldn't ask for much more.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Yeah, of course.